Imagine standing at the bottom of the tallest mountain on Earth. Above you, nearly 9 kilometers of rock, ice, and snow. The air at the top is so thin that every breath feels like you're breathing through a straw. For decades, people believed nobody would ever reach the summit alive. But in 1953, two climbers set out to prove them wrong. This is the story of the race to conquer Mount Everest. For thousands of years, Mount Everest simply stood there, towering over the Himalayas at 8,849 meters, or 29,032 feet. It was the highest point on Earth. To local communities, the mountain was deeply respected and known by names such as Chomolungma in Tibet and Sagarmatha in Nepal. To explorers from around the world, it became the ultimate challenge. If someone could stand on its summit, they would stand higher than any human ever had before. Early expeditions began in the 1920s. The equipment was heavy. Clothing was primitive compared to today's standards. Maps were incomplete. Nobody knew the best route. Every expedition pushed a little higher, then turned back. Sometimes because of storms, sometimes because of exhaustion, sometimes because they simply ran out of time. Each attempt ended the same way. Everest remained unconquered. Then came one of the mountain's greatest mysteries. In 1924, British climbers George Mallory and Andrew Irvine disappeared high on the mountain. The last time anyone saw them, they were climbing toward the summit. Then, they vanished into the clouds. Did they reach the top before they died? Nobody knows. Their disappearance became one of mountaineering's greatest unanswered questions, and it only made Everest even more legendary. Nearly 30 years later, another expedition arrived. This time, everything had been planned down to the smallest detail. Hundreds of porters carried food, tents, fuel, climbing ropes, oxygen equipment. Every piece of gear had to be hauled higher and higher up the mountain, step by step, camp by camp. Nothing about climbing Everest was easy. Even reaching the starting point took weeks. As the climbers gained altitude, the mountain began fighting back. The air became thinner. Walking just a few steps left them gasping for breath. Temperatures dropped far below freezing. Powerful winds swept across exposed ridges. Simple tasks became exhausting. Even melting snow for drinking water required precious energy. Above 8,000 meters, climbers enter what mountaineers call the death zone. There isn't enough oxygen for the human body to recover properly. Every hour spent there increases the danger. The goal becomes simple. Keep moving? Finally, the expedition was ready for its summit attempt. The first climbing team tried, but had to turn back. That meant another pair would get the chance. Edmund Hillary of New Zealand and Tenzing Norgay, an experienced Sherpa climber from Nepal. Together, they began their final climb. Every step became a struggle. Snow covered the route. Ice walls blocked their path. One section was especially difficult, a steep wall of rock and ice that seemed almost impossible to climb. Today, it's known as the Hillary Step. Carefully, the two climbers worked their way upward, one move at a time. No shortcuts, no second chances. Then, on May 29th, 1953, after weeks of climbing, they reached the summit. For the first time in recorded history, humans stood on the highest point on Earth. Around them, nothing stood higher, only sky. They spent just a short time on top, taking photographs, leaving a few small items, and simply taking in the moment. Because on Everest, reaching the summit is only halfway. You still have to make it back down. The news spread around the world. Newspapers celebrated the achievement. The impossible had become possible. Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay became international heroes. Their success inspired generations of climbers. Everest was no longer an unconquerable mountain, but it was still an incredibly dangerous one. Since 1953, thousands of people have reached the summit. Advances in equipment, weather forecasting, and climbing techniques have made expeditions more successful. But Everest has never become easy. Avalanches, storms, extreme cold, altitude sickness, and the thin air continue to make every climb a serious challenge. Even today, the mountain demands respect. The race to conquer Everest wasn't really about being first. It was about proving what humans could achieve through determination, preparation, and teamwork. Two people from opposite sides of the world, working together, reached a place nobody had ever stood before. Not because the mountain became smaller, but because they refused to give up. Sometimes, the greatest victories aren't won by moving the fastest. They're won one difficult step at a time. Subscribe for more bad drawings and interesting facts. Thanks for watching.